Private Maya Chen sat in the back corner of the briefing room at Fort Carson, Colorado. Her shoulders were straight, her hands folded neatly on the table in front of her. She had learned long ago that staying quiet was safer than speaking up. But quiet was exactly what Sergeant Daniel Briggs couldn't stand. "Chen!" His voice boomed across the room like a cannon. "You still awake back there, or did you forget how to speak English?" A few soldiers snickered. Maya didn't flinch. She met his gaze and nodded once, her face calm. She had heard worse. Sergeant Briggs was a 20-year veteran with arms like tree trunks and a voice that could shake windows. He believed in discipline, strength, and soldiers who proved themselves with their mouths as much as their skills. He had no patience for the small, quiet private who barely spoke unless spoken to, and even then only answered with the minimum required words. "That's your problem, Chen," he continued, pacing in front of the room. "You sit there like a ghost. Never volunteer, never speak up, never show any fire. How are you supposed to lead soldiers someday if you can't even talk at morning briefing?" Maya kept her expression neutral. Inside, she felt the familiar sting of being misunderstood. But she had reasons for her silence. Reasons that Sergeant Briggs couldn't possibly understand. She had joined the Army 2 years ago, just after becoming a U.S. citizen. The ceremony had been the proudest day of her life. She had stood with her hand over her heart, tears in her eyes, and pledged allegiance to the country that had given her family refuge when they had nothing. The uniform she now wore meant everything to her, but it didn't mean people understood her. After the briefing, Maya walked across the base toward the language training facility. It was a building most soldiers never entered. She scanned her badge and moved through the quiet hallways until she reached room 14. Inside, Major Lauren Vasquez was waiting. "Maya, good, you're here." The major smiled warmly. Unlike Briggs, Major Vasquez knew exactly who Maya was. "How are you holding up?" "Fine, ma'am." Maya's voice was soft but clear. "Still getting grief from Briggs?" Maya hesitated, then nodded. "He doesn't mean harm. He just doesn't understand." Major Vasquez sighed. "I know we've asked you to keep your assignment quiet, but it's creating problems for you. He thinks you're just a regular infantry private with no backbone." "It's safer this way," Maya said. "If people knew what I really do, it would compromise everything." And that was the truth that Sergeant Briggs and the others didn't know. Maya wasn't just a private. She was one of the Army's most valuable intelligence assets. Born in a refugee camp on the Thai-Myanmar border, she had grown up surrounded by languages. Her mother was Burmese. Her father had been a Karen ethnic minority fighter. The camp had been filled with people from everywhere: aid workers, refugees, missionaries, traders. By the time Maya was 12, she spoke 6 languages fluently: Burmese, Karen, Mandarin, Chinese, Thai, Arabic, and English. She didn't just speak them. She understood the culture, the nuances, the idioms, the way people thought in those languages. It was a gift born from necessity, from a childhood spent navigating a world where the wrong words to the wrong person could mean danger. When her family resettled in the United States, Maya had worked hard to blend in, to become American. She graduated high school in Texas, worked at a grocery store, and studied at community college. Then she enlisted. During her recruitment testing, a sharp-eyed analyst noticed her language background and flagged her file. Within months, she had been pulled into a classified program. Her role was simple but critical: listen, translate, and decode enemy communications. She worked in the shadows, monitoring intercepted messages, translating interrogation videos, and providing real-time linguistic support for intelligence operations. But to maintain operational security, she had to appear ordinary. Just another junior enlisted soldier. She couldn't tell anyone about her work. Not her bunkmates. Not her unit. And definitely not Sergeant Briggs. "There's something coming," Major Vasquez said, sliding a folder across the table. "We've intercepted chatter about a potential attack on a coalition base in Afghanistan. The communications are mixed: Pashto, Arabic, some Mandarin. We think there's a foreign arms dealer involved, possibly Chinese, working with local militants." Maya opened the folder and scanned the transcripts. Her eyes moved quickly over the words. "We need you to go through all of this and find connections," the major continued. "We have linguists for each individual language, but you're the only one who can see the patterns across all of them. We need it done in 72 hours. "I'll have it done in 48, Maya said quietly. Major Vasquez smiled. "I know you will." That evening, Maya returned to her barracks. Her bunkmate, Private Jessica Torres, was polishing her boots. "Hey, Maya. Briggs was brutal today, huh?" Maya shrugged as she sat on her bunk. "He's just doing his job." "His job is to be a jerk?" Jessica laughed. "Come on, you can say it. He picks on you." "It's fine," Jessica shook her head. "You're too nice. One of these days you should just tell him off. Show him you're not some scared little mouse." Maya smiled faintly. If only Jessica knew. If only any of them knew, but she couldn't tell them. So she stayed quiet. She let them think what they wanted. It was easier that way. Safer. That night she lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling. She thought about her father, who had died fighting for freedom before she was old enough to remember his face. She thought about her mother, who cleaned office buildings at night so Maya could go to school. She thought about the oath she had taken. She hadn't joined the army for recognition. She had joined to serve. And if that service meant being misunderstood, even mocked, then so be it. But deep down, a small part of her wondered what it would be like to be seen. Really seen. Not as the quiet girl in the corner, but as the soldier she truly was. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her. Tomorrow she had work to do. Enemy communications to decode, threats to uncover, lives to save. And Sergeant Briggs would never know. At least that's what she thought. The next morning came early. Maya was up before dawn, running laps around the base perimeter while the Colorado sky turned from black to deep purple. She ran alone, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. Running helped her think. It cleared her mind. By the time she reached the chow hall, the sun was just breaking over the mountains. She grabbed a tray, scrambled eggs, toast coffee, and found a seat away from the crowd. She preferred it that way, quiet and visible, but Sergeant Briggs had other plans. "Chen." His voice cut through the breakfast noise. "Get over here." Maya picked up her tray and walked to where Briggs sat with 3 other sergeants. They were older men, all with combat patches on their shoulders and years of experience in their eyes. "Yes, Sergeant? We were just talking about the new deployment roster," Briggs said, leaning back in his chair. "Your name's on it. Heading to Afghanistan in 6 weeks." Maya nodded. She had been expecting this. "Yes, Sergeant. You ready for that?" one of the other sergeants asked. His name was Hale. He had kind eyes. "It's not like training. It's the real thing." "I'm ready," Maya said simply. Briggs snorted. "You can barely speak up in a briefing room, Chen. What are you going to do when bullets start flying? Whisper at the enemy?" The other sergeants chuckled uncomfortably. Hale looked away. Maya felt the heat rise in her chest, but she kept her voice level. "I'll do my job, Sergeant." "Your job is to follow orders and stay alive," Briggs said. "That means communication. Loud, clear, and confident. I don't see any of that in you." "Understood, Sergeant." Maya's voice didn't waver. Briggs studied her for a long moment, then waved his hand dismissively. "Dismissed." Maya returned to her seat. Her eggs were cold now, but she ate them anyway. Across the room, she saw Jessica giving her a sympathetic look. Maya just shook her head slightly. It was fine. It was always fine, but it wasn't fine. Not really. Later that morning, Maya reported to the classified intelligence facility. She had 16 hours of intercepted audio to review, and the clock was ticking. She put on her headphones and began to work. The first file was in Arabic. 2 men discussing weapons shipment routes. She transcribed it quickly, noting the key details, dates, locations, code names. The second file was in Mandarin. A phone call between a supplier and a buyer. The buyer was haggling over prices for missile components. Maya's pen moved rapidly across the page. The third file made her pause. It was in Karen, her father's language. She hadn't expected that. The voice was a woman's, older, speaking quickly. She was coordinating with someone about moving people across a border, but something about the phrasing was off. These weren't refugees. These were fighters. Maya rewound the audio and listened again. Then again. She pulled up a map and began cross-referencing the locations mentioned. Then she switched to another file, this one in Pashto. A man's voice, younger, talking about a meeting. Her heart began to beat, faster. She opened another file. Arabic. Another. Conversation about the same meeting. She pulled up the Mandarin file again and listened to a specific section. Then it clicked. These weren't separate incidents. They were all connected. The Chinese arms dealer, the Afghan militants, the Karen fighters, they were all part of the same network. A complex web of illegal arms trading that stretched across 3 continents. And they were planning something big. Maya worked through the night, piecing together the puzzle. By morning, she had a full intelligence report ready. She printed it and took it directly to Major Vasquez. The Major read it in silence, her expression growing more serious with each page. Maya, this is bigger than we thought. She looked up. This network could supply weapons to militant groups for years. If we can disrupt it, we save countless lives. What do we do? Maya asked. I'm taking this up the chain. CIA, NSA, everyone needs to see this. But I need you to be ready. They're going to want to talk to you directly. They're going to want to know how you made these connections. Maya nodded. She understood what that meant. Her cover would be partially blown. People would start asking questions. Are you okay with that? Major Vasquez asked gently. Yes, ma'am, if it helps the mission. 3 days later, Maya found herself in a secure conference room with people she'd never met. Men and women in suits, high-ranking officers, intelligence analysts from multiple agencies. They asked her detailed questions. How did she identify the pattern? What were the linguistic markers that connected the communications? Could she verify the translations? She answered everything clearly and professionally. She showed them the work. She walked them through each step. When it was over, a colonel she didn't recognize shook her hand. Outstanding work, Private Chen. Truly outstanding. This intelligence is going to shape our operations for months. Maya felt a small flicker of pride, but she kept her expression humble. Just doing my job, sir. As she left the building, she saw Sergeant Briggs across the parking lot. He was talking to another soldier, laughing about something. He didn't notice her. She wondered what he would think if he knew. Would he still mock her silence? Would he understand that some soldiers serve in ways that don't require loud voices? But she pushed the thought away. It didn't matter. She didn't need his approval, or so she told herself. That evening, back in the barracks, Jessica was buzzing with rumors. Did you hear? Something big is going down. They've got intelligence about some huge weapons network. Everyone's talking about it. Maya just nodded, changing into her PT uniform. They say it took some genius analyst to figure it out. Jessica continued. Someone who speaks like 1,000,000 languages or something. That's good, Maya said quietly. Yeah, I wish I could do something important like that, you know? Instead of just drills and training. I want to make a real difference. Maya looked at her friend and smiled softly. You will, Jess. When the time comes, you will. But that time came sooner than anyone expected. 2 weeks later, the entire base was called to emergency assembly. Maya stood in formation with her unit, Sergeant Briggs barking orders to straighten the lines. A general stepped up to the microphone, his face grave. Soldiers, we have a developing situation. A coalition forward operating base in Afghanistan is under imminent threat. We have credible intelligence that a coordinated attack is being planned using sophisticated foreign weapons. We're deploying a rapid response team immediately. Maya's stomach tightened. This mission requires specialized skills, the general continued. We need intelligence support on the ground. We need linguistic capabilities to interface with local forces and potentially interrogate captured enemies. Maya knew what was coming before he said it. Private Maya Chen, front and center. The formation went silent. Hundreds of eyes turned to look at her. Maya stepped forward, her heart pounding. She marched to the front and stood at attention before the general. Behind her, she heard whispers, confused murmurs, and Sergeant Briggs's voice low and bewildered. Chen, what the hell? The general looked at her with respect. Private Chen, we need you on this mission. Your linguistic and intelligence skills are critical. Are you prepared to deploy immediately? Maya's voice rang out clear and strong. Yes, sir. I'm ready. And just like that, everything changed. The transport plane's engines roared as Maya sat strapped into the webbed seat, her gear secured beside her. Around her were 12 special operations soldiers, rangers mostly, along with 2 intelligence officers and a combat medic. These were the best of the best, handpicked for rapid deployment. And then there was her. Across the cargo hold, Sergeant Briggs sat staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Confusion, suspicion, maybe even anger. He had been added to the mission at the last minute. His squad was tagged as additional security for the operation, which meant Maya would be working directly under his command in the field. The irony wasn't lost on her. Major Vasquez had pulled her aside before they boarded. I know this isn't ideal. Briggs is going to have questions. You can brief him on need-to-know basis only. Don't let him rattle you. You belong on this mission. But now, 30,000 feet over the Atlantic, Maya could feel his eyes on her. Finally, he unbuckled and made his way across the shaking aircraft to sit beside her. You want to tell me what's really going on, Chen? His voice was low, meant only for her. Maya met his gaze. I'm a linguist, Sergeant. I work in intelligence. Since when? Since I enlisted. It's classified work. I couldn't talk about it. Briggs's jaw tightened. So all this time, while I've been writing you about speaking up, you've been doing… What, secret spy stuff? Translation and analysis. I listen to intercepted communications and decode patterns. He leaned back, processing this. And you couldn't tell anyone? No, Sergeant. Operational security. Jesus, he rubbed his face. So when I called you out in briefings, said you couldn't communicate? You didn't know, Maya said simply. It's fine. It's not fine. He looked at her again, and this time there was something different in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or the beginning of it. Why didn't you defend yourself? Because the mission was more important than my pride. Briggs was quiet for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. I owe you an apology, Private. I judged you without knowing the facts. That was wrong. Maya shook his hand. Thank you, Sergeant. But out there, he nodded toward the front of the plane, toward Afghanistan. We need to work together. I need to know I can count on you, not just to translate, but to handle yourself if things go bad. You can count on me, Maya said firmly. All right then. Briggs returned to his seat. Maya exhaled slowly. One bridge crossed. But the real test was still ahead. They landed at Bagram Airfield 14 hours later. The Afghan sun was blazing, the air dry and dusty. Maya had never been in a combat zone before. The reality of it hit her the moment she stepped off the plane. The smell of jet fuel and burning trash, the sound of helicopters overhead, the sight of soldiers in full combat gear moving with purposeful urgency. This was real. They were briefed in a plywood building that still smelled of fresh lumber. A captain from Army Intelligence laid out the situation on a digital map. The forward operating base, FOB Sharana, is here in Paktika province. We've intercepted communications indicating an attack planned for some time in the next 72 hours. The enemy force is estimated at 40 to 60 fighters, armed with heavy weapons supplied through the network Private Chen identified. All eyes turned to Maya. She kept her face neutral. We have local Afghan forces at the FOB, but there's been a breakdown in communication. Their commander speaks limited English. We also have reports of a potential insider threat. Someone at the base may be feeding information to the enemy. That's where I come in, Maya said. Exactly. You'll interface with the Afghan commander, vet his men through conversation, and monitor local radio chatter. If you can identify the insider before the attack, we can stop this before it starts. And if we can't, Briggs asked, then we defend the base and hope we're ready. They choppered out to FOB Sharana that afternoon. The base was small, just a collection of concrete barriers, sandbag fortifications, and temporary buildings surrounded by watchtowers and wire. It sat in a valley with mountains rising on three sides, defensible but vulnerable if the enemy had the high ground. The Afghan commander, Colonel Zahir, met them on the landing zone. He was a weathered man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. He spoke in Pashto to his aide, then turned to the American team. Welcome, he said in heavily accented English. We are glad for help. Maya stepped forward and responded in fluent Pashto. Colonel Zahir, it's an honor to work with you. We're here to support your defense and find the threat before it strikes. Zahir's eyes widened in surprise. Then he smiled and continued in Pashto, speaking rapidly. You speak like a native. Where did you learn? From recordings and study, Maya replied, and from people who wanted to be understood. The colonel laughed and clapped her on the shoulder. You are welcome here, truly. Come, we have much to discuss. Over the next hour, Maya sat with Zahir and his senior officers conversing entirely in Pashto. She asked careful questions, watching their reactions, listening not just to their words but to how they spoke. Trust had to be earned, especially here. Briggs and the other Americans stood nearby, unable to understand but watching Maya work. She was a different person here, confident, engaged, commanding respect through her linguistic skill and cultural awareness. When the meeting ended, Zahir assigned 2 of his men to work directly with Maya. They will help you speak with all the soldiers, he explained. If there is a snake among us, we will find him together. Over the next 2 days, Maya interviewed over 60 Afghan soldiers. She did it casually during meals, during guard shifts, while walking the perimeter. She asked about their families, their villages, their reasons for serving. Most were genuine, men fighting to protect their homes from the Taliban. But 3 of them made her instincts prickle. They were too vague about their backgrounds, too careful with their words. And when she code-switched, dropping in a phrase of Arabic or slipping in a word from a different Pashto dialect, they reacted in ways that suggested deeper knowledge than they claimed. She reported her suspicions to Briggs and the intelligence captain. "We can't just arrest them without proof," the captain said. "It could turn the whole Afghan force against us." "Then we watch them," Briggs said. "Around the clock." "Chen, can you monitor their conversations?" "Already on it," Maya said. She had positioned herself near their barracks and had been listening. They're careful, but they're communicating with someone. "I heard one of them mention the night of the new moon." "That's tomorrow," Briggs said. "The attack is tomorrow night," Maya confirmed. The base went on high alert. Defensive positions were reinforced. Extra ammunition was distributed. Every soldier knew what was coming, but Maya had one more job to do. That evening, she sat in the communications room with headphones on, listening to local radio frequencies. The chatter was constant: farmers, taxi drivers, shopkeepers. But she was listening for something specific. Then she heard it. A voice speaking in Arabic with a Chinese accent confirming coordinates. Then a response in Pashto from inside the base, one of the 3 men she had flagged. She ripped off her headphones and ran to find Briggs. "I've got him. 3rd suspect, the one called Hamid. He just transmitted our defensive positions to the enemy." Briggs didn't hesitate. He grabbed 2 rangers and moved swiftly to the Afghan barracks. They found Hamid trying to slip away in the darkness. A search of his belongings revealed a hidden satellite phone and a map marked with attack routes. Colonel Zahir was furious. He questioned the man himself in rapid Pashto, and Maya translated for the Americans. "He's been paid by a foreign handler," Maya said. "He gave them everything: guard rotations, weak points, ammunition stores. But he doesn't know exactly when they're coming, just that it's soon." "We're ready," Briggs said. And then, as if on cue, the first explosion lit up the night sky. The attack had begun. The world erupted in fire and thunder. Maya hit the ground as the mortar round exploded 50 yards from the command building, showering dirt and rocks across the compound. Her ears rang, her heart hammered, but her training kicked in. "Get to the command post," Briggs was shouting, pulling her up by her arm. "We need you on the radios." They ran in a crouch as more mortars screamed in from the mountains. The Taliban had the high ground, just as feared. Tracers lit the darkness, green from the enemy positions, red from the FOB's machine guns returning fire. Inside the fortified command post, controlled chaos reigned. Radios crackled with multiple voices. American officers coordinated defensive positions while Afghan soldiers shouted updates in Pashto. The intelligence captain thrust a headset at Maya. "We're intercepting enemy communications but can't understand them fast enough. We need real-time translation." Maya pulled on the headset. Immediately, voices filled her ears: Pashto, Arabic, and something else, Mandarin, faint in the background. "They're coordinating a 3-pronged assault," Maya said, her voice cutting through the noise with clear authority. "Main force from the North Ridge, secondary team trying to breach the east wall, and a small unit, sounds like 4 or 5 men, attempting to cut through the wire on the south side." "How do you know all that?" an officer asked. "Because they're speaking 3 different languages to coordinate," Maya said. "The commanders are using Arabic, the fighters Pashto, and someone, probably the foreign weapons specialist, is giving instructions in Mandarin." She listened again, her mind processing 3 conversations simultaneously. "The South team is carrying explosives. They're trying to blow a hole for the main force to rush through." Briggs was already on the radio. "All units, reinforce the south wall. Heavy weapons team, get eyes on that sector now." The battle raged for 20 minutes. Maya stayed on the headset, translating enemy movements before they happened. When the Taliban fighters shifted tactics, she heard it in their communications and gave the Americans precious seconds to respond. "Sniper team moving to the west tower," she called out. "They're targeting our machine gun position." American counter-snipers adjusted, RPG team setting up on the North Ridge, grid coordinates. She rattled off numbers. Artillery fire was adjusted and unleashed. But the enemy was determined. The explosives. Team breached the south wall, and suddenly Taliban fighters were pouring through the gap. The battle became close quarters, brutal and desperate. "We need everyone who can fight," Briggs said. He looked at Maya. "That includes you. Can you handle a weapon?" Maya had qualified expert marksman in basic training. "Yes, Sergeant." He handed her an M4 rifle. "Stay close to me." They moved out into the compound. The night was chaos. Muzzle flashes, explosions, screaming in multiple languages. Maya took position behind a concrete barrier and began engaging targets. Her training took over. Breathe. Aim, squeeze. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. Beside her, Briggs was firing controlled bursts, directing his squad with hand signals between shots. Then Maya heard something in her headset that made her blood run cold. A voice in Mandarin. "Detonate the package when the Americans cluster near the south breach." There was a bomb. Somewhere near the breach where American and Afghan soldiers were now concentrated, fighting back the Taliban assault. "Briggs!" she shouted over the gunfire. "Pull everyone back from the south wall. There's a secondary device." "What?" "Bomb. They planted a bomb. Pull back now." Briggs didn't question. He trusted her. He grabbed his radio and screamed the order. "All units south wall, fall back now, IED danger." Soldiers began retreating, dragging wounded with them. The Taliban fighters, seeing the withdrawal, surged forward. Then the bomb detonated. The explosion was massive, a fireball that shot 50 feet into the air. The blast wave knocked Maya off her feet. When her vision cleared, the south wall was gone, just a smoking crater. Bodies of Taliban fighters who had rushed into the trap lay scattered. If American soldiers had still been there, they would have died. "How did you know?" Briggs was beside her, helping her up, his face blackened with soot. "I heard them." The weapons specialist gave the order in Mandarin. He stared at her. "You just saved 20 lives. The Taliban attack faltered after that. With their trap failed and having taken heavy casualties, the enemy fighters withdrew into the mountains. By dawn, the battle was over. The FOB was damaged but standing. 3 Americans were wounded, none killed. The Afghan forces had lost 5 men. It could have been so much worse." As the sun rose over the mountains, Maya sat on a pile of sandbags, exhausted. Her hands were shaking from adrenaline. She had been in combat. She had taken lives. She had saved lives. Colonel Zahir approached and sat beside her. In Pashto, he said, "You are a warrior, a true warrior, not just with weapons, but with wisdom." "Thank you, Colonel," she replied in his language. "Your men fought bravely. As did you." Later that morning, as helicopters arrived with reinforcements and medical evacuation, Sergeant Briggs found Maya. "I need to say something," he began, then paused, choosing his words carefully. "I spent 2 months thinking I knew who you were. I thought you were weak because you were quiet. I thought you had nothing to offer because you didn't speak up." Maya started to respond, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish. I was wrong, dead wrong. You're one of the strongest soldiers I've ever served with. You didn't need to prove yourself with loud words because you prove yourself with action, with skill, with courage." He extended his hand. "It's an honor to serve with you, Private Chen." She shook his hand, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly seen. When they returned to Fort Carson 2 weeks later, things were different. The mission's success had been noted at the highest levels. The intelligence Maya had developed had not only stopped the attack, but had led to raids that dismantled the entire weapons smuggling network across 3 countries. She was called to a ceremony on the parade ground. Her entire unit was there. So was Sergeant Briggs, standing at attention with respect in his eyes. A general she had never met pinned the Army Commendation Medal on her chest for exceptional meritorious service in combat operations. Private Chen represents the very best of what it means to be a soldier, the general said to the assembled formation. She serves with humility, excellence, and unwavering dedication. She is proof that strength comes in many forms, and that the quiet professionals among us are often the most essential. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, soldiers who had never spoken to her before came up to shake her hand, to thank her, to tell her they had heard what she did. Jessica hugged her tight. "I can't believe you've been doing all this secret agent stuff and never told me." "It wasn't about recognition," Maya said. "It was about service." "Well, you've got both now." But the moment that meant the most came later that evening. Sergeant Briggs approached her in the mess hall carrying 2 cups of coffee. He set one in front of her. "I've been thinking about something you said on the plane," he began. "You said the mission was more important than your pride. That's why you didn't defend yourself when I was being a jackass." Maya smiled slightly. "You weren't a jackass, Sergeant. You were doing what you thought was right. Still, I learned something from you. Real strength isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing who you are and serving with everything you have, whether anyone notices or not." He sipped his coffee. "I'm going to be a better leader because of what you showed me." "Thank you, Sergeant. That means a lot." 3 months later, Maya was promoted to specialist. Her work continued, still mostly classified, still mostly invisible. But now, when she walked through the base, soldiers nodded with respect. When she sat in briefing rooms, people listened when she spoke. And when new privates joined the unit, nervous and uncertain, Sergeant Briggs would tell them a story. "Let me tell you about a soldier I served with," he would say. "She was quiet, didn't make a fuss. Some people thought that made her weak. But when it mattered most, she spoke in 6 enemy languages and saved lives. She taught me that you can't judge a soldier by their volume. You judge them by their valor." Maya would hear these stories secondhand and smile. She had joined the army to serve her country, to honor the sacrifice of those who came before her, to prove that an immigrant girl from a refugee camp could defend the nation that gave her a home. She didn't need to be loud to do that. She just needed to be ready. And when the moment came, when her country needed her specific gifts, her unique voice, she had spoken in 6 languages. And the world had listened.